Welcome to Noise and Brief, PRWeek UK's fortnightly podcast series where we discuss the biggest industry news stories from the past week in a bite-sized format. Let's start by saying Happy New Year, everyone. We're back and ready and raring to go in 2024. I'm your host, Siobhan Holt, news editor at PRWeek UK, and today I'm joined by our reporters Evie, Barrett and Wiredu, and PRWeek UK editor John Harrington. Welcome all.
Hello.
So how was everyone's holiday? Did you get any exciting presents? What did Santa bring you, John?
Santa gave me the courage to make a nut roast.
Nice. How'd it go?
It went fairly well, thank you. Yes.
Good.
There were too many cranberries.
Lessons for next year.
Lessons for next year. Another lesson is start early with the chestnuts because they take ages to shell them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I don't know how those people just sell them on carts or whatever. But they must take, presumably they've just got, maybe they have monkeys, maybe they train monkeys to do it.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a question for this year.
If anyone knows, write into John.
Yeah.
What about you ladies?
Yeah, good break. No nut roast for me, so none of that drama.
Turkey?
Yes. Yeah, it was nice. Lots of food and a nice break. But yeah, ready to go now.
Good.
It was very relaxing. I didn't do anything at all.
That sounds wonderful. And surely that's what the break's for.
Yeah,
Nice
it was
rest.
a well-deserved rest.
Yeah, absolutely.
How was yours?
Good. Bit chaotic getting home because of the trains at Euston. But
Oh,
apart
yeah.
from that, got a message off you going, oh dear.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bearer of
Sorry,
bad
mate.
news. Yeah.
But made it home. And yeah, it was nice to see the family and just, as you guys say, relax really. Presents-wise, I got lots of lovely gifts, but my favourite was from my mum and dad, which was a pan.
Nice.
Which is great, bringing that back to London.
Yeah. Were you ever tempted to use it as a weapon amid all of the
Yeah, New Year's.
travelling?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, make room on the trains.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't recommend that, by the way.
No violence in 2024, John.
No.
Come on. But yes, it was an interesting and nice break then for everyone. Good. Well, as it's New Year, I did want to take the opportunity to flag that PRWeek has announced its impressive annual conference schedule. We have PRWeek's PharmaComms conference coming up in March, and then later in spring we will host our huge PR360 conference in Brighton. The details of all our events in 2024 can be found on prweek.com UK, so book your place today and have a look, they're really great. Back to the news, let's begin by discussing some of the big news stories and the best and worst communicators over the festive period. Evie, let's begin with you. What headlines caught your eye over the past 2 weeks?
Yeah, so I saw the WH Smith rebrand. A lot of people were talking about that. If you haven't seen it, they trialled a new logo on some of their stores, and it's a sign that just reads WHS instead of WH Smith. But it's quite unfortunate in the fact that the font and the colour are quite similar to the NHS logo. I thought it was actually quite surprising that that wasn't picked up during the production phases. And people were also pointing out that WHS isn't any quicker to say than WH Smith, so logistically that change doesn't make much sense if they were trying to shorten the name. I'm not sure why they didn't go for Smiths instead, because that's what a lot of people tend to call it. But I should point out that only 10 out of more than 1,000 of their stores have these signs, so it'd be interesting to know the strategy behind it and whether they're trying to differentiate certain stores maybe, or whether they were just trialling it for a potential wider launch.
I've seen some comments online really sort of shouting that it is a trial and that people jumping on the bandwagon maybe need to calm down a bit about that. But I did think it was interesting. Someone had suggested that maybe this might be an interesting move to see how the footfall into the stores goes, which I thought, that maybe, I don't think they've had the best couple of years, so maybe this is a way of improving that.
Yep.
What do you think, John, a former
employee of WH Smith
Yeah.
As a late teenager. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree with some of the criticism. It looks like a strange branding, but I also think you're right. I mean, it strikes me as a business that probably has quite a lot of work to do, and being in retail now is so hard.
Yeah.
And I think, you think back to Woolworths and people like that, they sort of went under, 15 years ago probably now. In a way, it's quite impressive that WH Smith have sort of kept going with their sort of business model, and they've still got, as you say, sort of 1,000 stores in the UK, but maybe they do feel they need to have a bit of a fresh start. So maybe they just feel, having a bit of a refresh is the right way to do it. So we'll see. I mean, we've put in a call to WH Smith to sort of get their side of it, to see what they're thinking. But it was interesting to see a lot of people in the industry kind of jumping on it over the Christmas period.
Was there anything else that caught your eye?
I don't really want to bring up Michelle Moan again.
Have a moan about moan.
Yeah, it just feels like this is, again, sort of continues to be a long-running saga of crisis comms. And obviously, it's not just about their one company, MedPro, and about these individuals in particular. It obviously links directly back to the government and their handling of COVID and the PPE crisis. So I won't go through all of the toings and froings of this, but briefly for the under rock dwellers, Moan and her husband, Doug Barrowman, were accused of profiteering from government PPE contracts during the pandemic. It's a famous car crash interview with Laura Kunsberg at the BBC last month, where they admitted to being dishonest to the press about whether they would benefit from the £60 million profit made via MedPro. They're back on the comms offensive in recent days. So there's a tweet from Barrowman on New Year's Day saying that the couple had become a scapegoat for government failures. It talks about the impact of their ordeal on their family. It says their pricing was competitive, delivered on time. Others would say it wasn't all up to scratch, or certainly wasn't all usable. They also said MedPro supplied just 1.5% of the total PPE, so why is everyone focusing on them? I'm not sure the strategy is working. I mean, Barrowman said all the PP money was declared to the taxman, but Dan Needle, the tax expert, tweeted saying it's not really the point. As he tweeted, the Isle of Man lets you cap your tax liability at £200,000, so it would be surprising if you paid a penny of tax on it. And, you get the reader's context under the tweets, and this pointed out that Barrowman is still not being open about his control of MedPro, which was a bone of contention. I think part of this sort of shows that if your strategy is I'm just going to tweet my side of the story, sometimes this is what happens. There's no perfect channel probably for defending your reputation, but it does feel like, they've tried other channels. They tried going to the media with the BBC interview as mentioned, and they had their own sort of slightly strange documentary that they'd put together that was over an hour long on YouTube. So, they're obviously trying, but I think they just need to be more upfront and empathetic, need to show gestures that they care, even if they think they're in the right. The fact is, they made a lot of money from this, and they should probably show that some of it's going to good causes. And, I think they should apologise. Moan famously said, I can't see what we've done wrong. I mean, I think pretty much everyone else can. So, unfortunately, that has been something I've had my eye on. Anyone else got any thoughts on this continuing saga?
Yeah, I don't think you can refer to yourself as a scapegoat if you've benefited that much from something. I mean, maybe there are others who have benefited and aren't owning up or anything, but you have to sort of look at this situation in isolation, and like you say, they definitely have some apologising to do and to kind of show and correct their actions.
Yeah, I agree.
Eliza, what about you? Was there anything that caught your eye in the headlines?
So I want to pick up on a government minister and a few words he said, which were a little bit uncomfortable. So after the Home Office announced a plan to crack down on spiking, our Home Secretary, James Cleverly, told female guests at a Downing Street reception that a bit of Rohypnol in her drink was not really illegal if it's only a little bit. He then went on to saying the secret to a long marriage is ensuring your wife is mildly sedated. He was joking, and he has expressed his regret, and he's said sorry since then. But this is not his first comms issue.
Has he said something else in the past?
So back in November, MP Alex Cunningham claimed that James called the constituency a shithole during Prime Minister's questions.
So that was Stockton-on-Tees, wasn't it, that he apparently called a shithole?
Which is a really bad thing to do for the people who have elected you. Conversations with Downing Street are normally off the record, but the Sunday Mirror decided to break this convention because of his position and the subject matter. People have asked him to resign, but Rishi Sunak said since he's apologised, the matter's considered closed. I just find the whole thing completely uncomfortable because you're cracking down on spiking, yet making spiking jokes. It's a little bit distasteful, and it kind of makes me wonder if the government actually cares as much as they say they are.
Yeah, if they're taking their policies as serious as they should be, as you say. It's like, at what point did he think that was a good idea, making that joke? I think it was in a room full of journalists, so I think we might have another error again of another MP thinking that they're off the record when they're in a room full of journalists.
Yeah, I mean, on the point about what he said about Stockton-on-Tees, cleverly said in a more recent interview, we clarified that he was calling this MP a shit. He wasn't saying Stockton-on-Tees is a shithole. Apparently he said shit MP, not shithole.
Right, okay.
So,
not very professional though, is it?
Not really. I really feel that this government is doing everything it can to be as unelectable as it's possible and to really alienate pretty much all of the electorate. I don't understand.
No, and he isn't the only MP, is he? We've had the MP for Bury North, not to bring up where I'm originally from, but yeah, he said in an interview with our newspaper over Christmas that most of the kids who struggle in Bury are the products of crap parents, and so what do we do to try to address that issue? Again, he's tried to clarify what his original point was. He was arguing that parents have a crucial role to play in ensuring they're able to support their children through early years, but I don't think, as you say, John, I feel like they're coming out with things that it's like they really don't want to be elected.
Yeah.
It's madness, really.
It feels like, you're sort of those days where you're kind of holding back on what you really think and you're trying to be polite, but you've had 2 hours sleep, like the trains are late, it's raining and you're late for an appointment. It's kind of like they're at that stage of the government.
No filter, it came out.
Yeah.
I found it a little bit insensitive as well, because parents have been going through a lot this year and the year before. It's not easy to raise kids. It's very expensive to have kids. So I think he needs a little bit more empathy more than anything else.
Yeah, and the early years are in the news today because obviously we've got new regulations for parents to do with young children around the age of 2. So they know that there is an issue on lack of support. So coming out with this is just not knowing your audience at all. And as you say, it's just really insulting to parents.
Yeah, I mean, talking of insulting, another example of this just before Christmas, Victoria Atkins, who's the health secretary, so another very senior minister, in an interview with the BBC, she referred to junior doctors as, quote, doctors in training, which was seen as hugely patronising and condescending. I think this just sort of points to the same problem they have, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't class myself after working for nearly 6 years in a role as still being in training, but maybe that's just me.
No, it just seems so totally unnecessary. I just simply struggle to know how they think this will benefit them.
And very out of step when we're about to experience another strike from doctors that is possibly going to be one of the biggest we've seen in the NHS history.
Well, this is it. And I guess they are sort of betting on the fact that the media, or certainly a lot of the right-wing media, is going to be more sceptical of junior doctors. And she's probably hoping to sort of jump on that bandwagon. But it seems like a very kind of dangerous game to play, really.
Yes.
Considering doctors are generally relatively popular people in society.
Yes, I like my doctor. So anyway, let's move on. Does anyone have any good examples then of communicators over the festive period?
So on a bit of a lighter note, I noticed that Luke Littler, the darts player, has been in the news a lot. He made headlines for his success in the World Darts Championship. Being only 16 years old, he's at the moment the youngest person to ever reach the semi-finals. We'll see if he goes any further. But I think a lot of those positive headlines have been slightly overshadowed, in my opinion, by lots of comments and memes about his age, with people saying that he looks much older than he is. Not necessarily that any of these comments are bad-natured, but I think at such a young age it must be tough being thrust into the spotlight, let alone with people judging your appearance. But through that, he seems to have come across as quite a good sport and is taking it all in his stride. The former darts player Wayne Mardle was among those impressed by him, saying 16-year-olds don't perform like this and they don't act like him. Said that he's very composed in his interviews and he never gets carried away. So seems to be coming across really well so far.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you're right, he comes across very well and he's really taken that all on his chin, really, and been quite positive and funny about it. So I agree with you on that one. For me, what stood out was the Queen of Denmark announcing that she is to abdicate after 52 years on the throne. It was a bit of a surprise, I think, to the Danish people, the announcement she made in her New Year's speech. She said she would step down on the 14th of January and that it'll be the anniversary of Ascension, so she's leaving the throne to a son, which will be the Crown Prince Frederick. She explained as well in her speech that it was sort of off the back of having back surgery in February last year, and she referenced this and sort of said that she'd reassessed her position and considered if the time had not come to leave the responsibility to the next generation. And she sort of said, like, you can no longer overcome the same things as you once did, which I thought was a very professional way to end her reign. And I know the Danish people do respect her because she's viewed as a queen that's more down to earth and has been seen as that. So I think her speech sort of did justice to that, really. So yeah, that was one that stood out to me. What about you, Liza? Anything?
I really enjoyed hearing about Lidl's maternity package. So Lidl has become the first supermarket to introduce 28 weeks of full pay for their colleagues on maternity and adoption leave. Lidl said that this move will not only support parents but set a benchmark for other industries to follow with the cost of living crisis and ongoing socio-economic issues. I thought Lidl showed a really deep commitment to understanding parents. I feel like this may boost retention, attract new talent, and support parents who need additional support. And Lidl has also introduced 5 days of paid leave for anyone affected by pregnancy loss. And I feel like that's something that we don't always talk about in the workplace. So it's really nice to see that they're opening the discussion and allowing their colleagues and staff members to have peace of mind about having young kids and not worrying about their finances, because having kids can be stressful.
Mm-hmm.
I think the timing of this is really good. It's the time of year when people move their jobs, isn't it?
Yes.
And if you can get a good story out there saying, we're going to support you with, maternity pay, then, that's a smart time to do it.
Moving on. Between Christmas and New Year, we shared our views on what we think the PR industry should do more or less of in 2024. So, Eliza, let's start with you. What do you think the industry should do more of?
I think the industry should have more conversation surrounding diversity and inclusion. In 2023, I saw a lot of agencies put in the work, and I saw some really amazing incentives and schemes. However, I think we still need to do more, because I feel like the PR industry has a bit of an issue with retaining diverse talent. I feel like representation is really important in all walks of life, and I feel like having more diverse voices in a room would only ever better a PR agency. I think more people should also provide their data to the people like us in PRWeek Annual Pay Gap Project, which I plug in every time I can, because having the data is really important and it shows a commitment for change, in my opinion.
Evie, what about you?
I think that more agencies should really focus on their media relations skills and hire more media relations experts. I think last year was obviously the year of AI, and a lot of people were getting excited about the fact that they could use these tools to do sort of quote unquote menial tasks like writing press releases and putting mailing lists together for journalists. But I think actually smart PR agencies will focus on strengthening these relationships with journalists and having these sort of human skills to send really personalised story pitches and make sure that they achieve cut through, because I think at the moment what's generated by AI is still quite generic and it's not going to compete with a really strong set of human skills.
John, what about you?
Yeah, so I think the industry should be focusing on the positive and really selling itself as a great place to work. And it comes back to the fact it's January, people are looking to recruit more. And obviously I know recruitment market is up and down, but people are looking to move jobs. And I think this is the time when the industry should be really selling itself. I mean, 2023, as we know, was a tough year. But overall, in the last few years, our industry has proven its incredible worth, particularly during the time of permacrisis, how it can adapt to things like the challenges of AI and the opportunities of AI, everything from that to the kind of era of corporate purpose, inverted commas, and ESG, to the importance of internal comms and the way sort of interaction with consumers has been changing and evolving, and sort of what's happening with social media and all of these things, where I think our industry is just so, general terms, pretty quick to adapt and to look where the opportunities are and to, kind of deliver for clients and for employers. So I think we should banish the imposter syndrome where it exists and kind of bang the drum really for comms, as I put it in the article, as the problem-solving discipline of the decade. So I know this is a bit kind of, drum banging and broad, but I do think that we shouldn't forget the problems in the industry aren't because people don't think comms is valuable. Almost all companies, I would say, and other organisations see the value of comms. There are just so many challenges around adapting to exactly, what clients want now. And obviously client and employer budgets are, difficult at the moment. So yeah, that shouldn't take away from the fact that this is a great industry where, a lot of people should want to work in. So bang the drum.
Absolutely. So was there anything that we think PR should do less of in 2024?
So I'm actually going to steal a point from Danny Rogers, our editor-in-chief. He said that essentially brands should focus on their real purpose and do less of all the other stuff, pretty much. They should focus on providing market-leading products and services in their chosen area of operation. So really just sort of focusing in on what they were originally intended to do. I think the whole notion of purpose has evolved so much that it's almost hard to imagine brands regressing in this way and sort of choosing to stay in their own lanes in the future. But it does make you wonder if more will take steps similar to what we saw Unilever do last year. Otherwise, I think it's conceivable that things could become quite complicated. As we've already seen, purpose can get quite tricky, particularly as it did towards the end of last year.
Yeah. John, what do you think?
My point's quite similar to Danny's, actually. I just think it's this idea of plastic purpose. You know, and as all these sort of debates rumble on, there's undoubtedly more scepticism about purpose campaigns over the past year or so, or probably 2 years. And, you know, I think brands and companies should still incorporate it into their campaigns, but just sort of stop the bandwagoning, really, and do it properly. And, you know, echoing what Danny was saying, looking at the business outcomes as a priority, but also making sure that, you know, genuine purpose is there too.
You could see that over the Christmas period. A lot of the campaigns that were running weren't as purpose-led this time.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it really did feel like there was a change. Although, as John Lewis pointed out, when we had someone from John Lewis on our podcast last month or the month before, November, she was making the point that there is a purpose there because they had a charity single connected to their campaign, which, if you remember, involved a Venus flytrap wanting to be a Christmas tree.
Yep.
And, you know, cute kids and just all of that sort of, you know, feel-good family stuff. And, yeah, it wasn't an overt purpose campaign, but there was purpose there. And I sort of think this shows a kind of switch towards something more like old style corporate social responsibility, where they are giving money to charity, which is the purpose part, but the campaign isn't overtly about doing something good other than just selling stuff and giving a nice Christmas scene for us all to enjoy. There's some interesting research, actually, from Teneo that came out last month. This found that, broadly, most chief executives are sort of still keen on ESG. Only 8% of them would be, inverted commas, ramping down their ESG programs. But they are changing them. 72% of company bosses say they're making one or more changes into how they operate as a response to what they call the recent politicisation of ESG. So a lot of the controversies last year around ESG connected to, well, obviously Bud Light is the kind of go-to example, isn't it, around the sort of Dylan Mulvaney work and how it seemed to sort of divide their audience. And there are plenty of other examples as well. But it does seem like companies are very, very acutely aware and concerned about the politicisation of ESG and what it might mean. So they are making changes, but I don't think it means that ESG is in itself less of a priority and that we're going to see fewer ESG programs. They're just going to change.
Yeah, I think it maybe even in some ways comes back to Eliza's point on the talent. Like it's more invest in the right areas, isn't it, and keep that talent. And I suppose it's a similar sort of vein on that.
Yeah, I think so. You know, people like to say such and such a thing is dead or such a thing is the future. You know, the reality is always somewhere between the two. I think ESG is going to evolve this year a lot. I think we're going to see a lot more of the kind of, the term I use, plastic purpose go away. And I think less of the overt sort of social cause related campaigning. But ESG will still be there and it's still an important part of what companies do.
Absolutely. If you enjoyed that and wanted to find out more of our views, you can read the articles in full on PRWeek.com. I encourage you to check out the website. You can view all our 2024 predictions, which will be published over the next few weeks. So, for example, we've asked 24 PR leaders to give 24-word predictions of what they believe is in store for the profession this year. Finally, PRWeek UK wanted to congratulate those people from our sector that have been recognised in the King's New Year's Honours list. Okay, Noise and Brief goes live every 2 weeks, but look out for our longer interview-based podcast, Beyond the Noise, which comes out next week. Thank you to Eliza, Evie and John for their insight. Do check out prweek.com/UK for all the latest news and all our great events too that are coming up in 2024. Thank you for listening. See you next time. Goodbye.